I think one of the biggest aspects of being a real friend is
I just always think about a real friend is
you should not be ashamed of who you are.
unashamed. Hi, I'm Annie.
And I'm Cass, and we are Unashamed. Welcome to our third video. Today we are going to be talking about what it means to be a real friend.
Yeah, so like Cassidy said, there is a lot that goes into what it means to be a real friend. So when we were talking about it, something that came up was that a real friend really knows you and knows where you thrive and also where you may lack. For example, my closest friends, they know kind of how I work. I don't really put on a facade because I'm someone who tends to kind of put on a mask depending on the group of people I'm with. And a lot of the times I just kind of pretend to be like a certain part of myself, but my really good friends know who I am and what I'm striving for, the goals that I have for myself, the ambitions that I have, but they also know areas that I lack, areas where I need improvement. And that's kind of what we want to focus on today is that a real friend is not only someone who is there in the times that are really great for us. Friendship is not all sunshine and rainbows. It's also hard and tough. So acknowledging where people lack in friendship and realizing that people do lack is very important when talking about real friendship. So Cassidy is going to talk a little bit more about the lack that we all have.
So I think one of the biggest aspects of being a real friend is, like Annie said, not highlighting, but knowing where your friend lacks. And while they're able to highlight and support you when you're doing really, really well, there are times when you just have no idea what you're doing, where you don't you just can't do something because it's not in your range of talents or whatever. And a real friend will know that lack, and they will help support you and make up for the lack that you have in that area.
Also, with lack, going off of what Cassidy said, is someone who is a real friend is not only going to acknowledge that lack and see that there's an area that you need help with, but they will actually push you to improve and realize, okay, I know that you lack in a certain area, but I'm going to help you grow. So, for example, if you are really struggling, let's say that you kind of lack just trust. Trust is something that you really struggle with in relationships, and it causes a lot of commitment issues, and it leads to a lack of trust in God. Someone who is a real friend is going to see that you have this lack, that you have a wound somewhere in your life that has caused this lack in your life, and they're not only going to acknowledge it and realize that that is a part of who you are, they're actually going to say, okay, this is where you lack, and we need to help you in some kind of way to increase your trust and kind of see where this lack of trust is coming from and kind of help you grow in that area.
Yeah. I think a lot of times when I think of just friendship in general, I kind of think of someone who supports me in the good times, but also they see the wounds that I have, and they kind of protect me in that area. But the thing is that yes, your real friends should protect you in the areas that you're wounded, but they should also help you heal and help help you grow more instead of just protecting you from something that they know that will hurt you. Because sometimes being hurt helps us to grow more.
And I know personally, this is really hard for me. I really struggle with being vulnerable and being completely open with people about the things that I struggle with. I kind of wish that it could be sunshine and rainbows all the time, but it's not. Friendship takes like a kind of vulnerability, especially if you're going to be sharing like wounds and different areas where you lack with someone. That takes a lot of vulnerability, and real friendship really requires you to take a leap and just like totally like reveal all of who you are to this friend. And I think a real friend will take that. I know if like someone was willing enough to do that for me, like I would be first of all so blessed, but also kind of with the theme of our channel, just let them know that they should be unashamed of who they are. And I feel like that's kind of what a real friend is there to push you to do.
Going off the like vulnerability part, like I don't know, for me personally, like I like making it seem like my life is all together, like I have everything figured out, but the truth is none of us have it figured out, because in an instant something could change and just make our whole plan fall apart. And we like to make a like perfect image of our life, and we like to cover up and hide our deepest wounds that we think people don't want to see. That people won't like me if they see that. And a real friend you'll be able to open yourself up to them enough to where they see those really deep wounds that you personally think that nobody will love you for, and they will acknowledge them and say, yes, like you lack in those places, and like those are really bad things, but you can work through it. Like I can help you as a friend become a better person and become the person, like help you become the person that God wants you to be, because you have to acknowledge the places where you really lack and you really hurt in order to become closer to God, because God accepts everything. Like he accepts the worst parts and the best parts. But in order to accept a person fully, you have to accept their worst parts and their best parts.
And that's why I feel like completely knowing someone is the only way that you can really be a real friend, because if you don't know what's there, what wounds are there, where they're lacking, then how can you be that friend to them? I just always think about a real friend is kind of like Jesus is like our realist friend, if you think about it. And so a lot of the times when I think of friendships, I always think about how Jesus knows us and knows our hearts completely. And that's why he is such a good friend, because he knows everything that is going on with our lives. And I always think of like my friendships, whenever I have like a really good friend, I always just think how they're being Christ to me in that way. And how a really good friend is ultimately someone who is like Jesus to us, who looks at us with compassion and really loves us. And even though a real friend cannot fully know us, because no one can fully know us except for God, they are still making that effort to know us and to strive to know us and who God created us to be.
I think another important aspect of like yes, being a real friend is important, but also you yourself, you have to allow someone to be a real friend. You have to allow yourself to be vulnerable to them. You have to allow yourself to open up and show your deepest parts. Otherwise, that person has no opportunity to be a real friend.
Yeah. And I think vulnerability has this really beautiful, it's like a beautiful but kind of painful way that we are able to connect with people, because being vulnerable is so hard. Totally showing who you are to people is so hard. But through that hurt of just being completely open to someone, it connects you on kind of a deeper level than before. Because with vulnerability, that friend or that person who you are being vulnerable with is getting more of a picture of what makes you you. They're getting more of a clear image that, like, this is who you are, and this is who I may be called to be friends with.
And ultimately, I think it's very important to point out that, like, you should not be ashamed of who you are. That's the point of Unashamed, is to not be ashamed of who you are. And that's one of the things with being a real friend, is to not be afraid of who you are, not be ashamed of who you are, and to allow yourself to let someone help you, because that can be a very hard thing, because personally I am a very independent person and I don't like it when people help me out that much. But the truth is that we need people to help us to get to heaven, and that is the ultimate goal of being a real friend, is to get somebody to heaven. And that, I think, is the best part about being able to be a real friend, is you're helping someone get to the best place ever.
Yeah. Okay. Do you want to close this out then, Cassidy?
Yes. We would absolutely love to hear what you think it means to be a real friend, whether that's a characteristic or something even more specific. And if you want to comment that down below, that would be amazing. And we potentially may do another video on this if we think it's necessary. So stay tuned to our videos. If you haven't yet watched the last video, our last two videos, the first one is a Q&A with Kate, Annie, and I. And our second video goes over what it means to be free of shame and why being unashamed is so important in your life. And don't forget to give us a big thumbs up, and please subscribe to stay tuned for more videos in the future.
Bye, guys.
Unashamed.